Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. It's been a few days since the budget was announced, and people have had time to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and see all the problems with it. Some of them leap out immediately upon seeing it, all the massive cuts to some of the most important areas of policy. This is because they literally haven't got the money. They've spent it all on nice shiny brochures, on foreign embassies, and everything they can possibly do. Jamie Hebbon's department, for example, everything they can possibly do to push the wet dream of independence. But they're spending nothing where it actually matters. Health, education, social policy, where people need it. Because they don't want to spend the money on people, because people often vote against them. But if they can spend it on the one area where people can't ignore it, constantly pushing independence, then that's all to the good. And of course it doesn't help that the woman doing this, the finance secretary herself, has an IQ of about 86. She's pretty thick, let's face it. She doesn't understand the consequences, poor thing. You know, it's hard going through life when you're that stupid you can barely tie your shoelaces. But the rejection isn't just from the opposition now, it seems. Now that the details have been looked at, there's a lot of dissent within the SNP and from some very senior people. Here goes. So here we go. SNP loyalists come out against a budget, as they warn Scotland is en route to being a third world economy. Well, I think it may already be there. One only has to look at the educational results and see that some subjects are at the equivalency of some third world countries. You know, and the economy is not growing. It's got the same growth as some of these third world economies. And it's not really surprising when you look to the leader, who is a third worlder himself, a man for whom a modern democratic democracy is anathema. It's not what he was raised with his sort of almost barbaric kind of cultural beliefs and, the background of where he comes from. That isn't how it's done. And of course, before that, you had an absolute psychopath who knew nothing about human nature. She was concerned only with her own focused agenda, didn't have any compassion. It's been a long time, really, since Scotland has been led by anyone who was in any way human. To give him his due, I think Salmon, while I disagree with his politics, and I think in some things he was awful for, you didn't feel that he was actually, scratch the surface and underneath you'd find a monster. I thought you'd find, he was quite intelligent, to be fair enough, but it's just terrible politics. But I think he was at least human. You can't say that about any of the others. Subsequently, you've had, like I say, a psychopath and a moron. But a moron from a dangerous system, and who has not got, let's just say, the cultural baggage of your average Scot to lay back on. No historical references, no family ties. He can't go back and talk about his family being there at Culloden, for example. And I know people who can. But it's there, and that isn't xenophobia on my part. It's a statement of a fact, and without that cultural sort of background and the historical links to the past, how can you possibly drive your country forward? But that's where it is. Now you've got all these people, party loyalists, looking at this budget, looking at the direction of the party, and thinking it's the wrong budget and it's the wrong direction, and that they are driving and destroying Scotland. And they're now starting to come out and say it. And I think this budget alone, will drive a wedge in the party away. They'll try and prize Humza Yousaf out and get rid of Shona Robison. She's shown herself to be quite incapable, as well as being incredibly stupid. And I think this will be the beginning of the end of Humza Yousaf. And of course, it could even be the beginning of the end of the SNP. A civil war now. Unless it's very quick, and unless Kate Forbes takes over, I think the SNP will be finished. I'm pretty glad if it is, to be honest. But it will cause a kind of interregnum, if you will. There'll be the chaos, and you will have this power vacuum for a while, because you'll have all these people still being MSPs, but no party there. And of course, Labour will then just jump in, but there'll be literally no opposition to Labour. So whatever madnesses Labour have, they'll be able to get away with it as well. You do need a strong opposition, and with going forward, this is going to be a problem. But I think it is something that needs to be addressed. I think the SNP's time is coming to an end. Certainly, as a major power, certainly. Anyway, we'll get into this. We'll talk about the budget. It's dragged on too much. Shona Robinson's budget has been slated by a former ally of Nicola Sturgeon, Andrew Wilson, who led Nicola Sturgeon's Sustainable Growth Commission. And he's not alone. Previous supporters of the SNP's finance plans have spoken out against their current budget proposals, with a warning that without change, Scotland will become a third world economy. Well, the other thing is, of course, once they get rid of oil, what the hell else have they got to fall back on? You can't live off the whiskey industry. And the meat industry, the Scottish beef and all that, good as it is, isn't a replacement for the petrochemical industry. Nothing. They got nothing. They keep pretending, we're going to just keep putting bird choppers up and lead the way in green tech. Yeah, but what's funding that? I'll tell you what's funding that. Oil. Anyway, Andrew Wilson, the economist who led Nicola Sturgeon's Sustainable Growth Commission, said that jobs and public finances would be undermined by creating the new band for high earners while raising tax for those with an income over $125,000. While Mary Macklin, an Ayrshire businesswoman and property developer who's a close ally of Sturgeon, said the Nats have not created a fair distribution of wealth. They can't do anything. They're useless. And this is the trouble. You've got a moron running finance. This comes days after warnings from MSPs, the British Medical Association and hospitality bosses, and most recently the council body COSLA. So, we're talking across the board, left and right, all sorts of different sectors, public, private, corporate, everyone coming out and saying that this is one of the worst budgets ever. And they're all, questioning things like the party's council tax freeze, which is unaffordable. As we know, it would have been nearly $1 billion had they given all the councils the money they were actually proposing to uplift by. They've given them $130 million. Not enough. Not anywhere near enough. And of course, the councils now, because they've broken the Verity House agreement, the councils are under no obligation to listen to this council tax freeze. So why the hell should they? They should just simply go, thanks very much, but no thanks. We're putting it up. We've got services that we have to maintain. Services that vulnerable people absolutely rely on. Scottish Conservative Shadow Secretary for Finance and the Economy Liz Smith said it's a measure of how disastrous Shona Robinson's budget is for Scotland that a growing number of senior figures within the SNP itself are choosing to put their heads above the parapet to denounce it. Now that is a shot aside. This would never have happened under Sturgeon. Under Sturgeon, no one would have dared say anything other than total praise for this budget. So it does go to show, firstly, how bad the budget is because you've got a moron trying to push it. And secondly, how weak Alibaba is, because nobody is scared of him. Nobody is sitting there going, I wonder what he'll think. They're just getting up and saying it because they've got no respect for him. They've got no fear of him. They've got no regard of him. He's simply a figurehead, and he's not even a good-looking one. Well, he's not an ugly man, but I mean, his actions and his behaviours and things he says, it's not good on the optics. You've got to be honest, he's not an ugly man. But his actions are ugly. What he's doing is terrible. But he's there, and he's basically, and everybody knows it, he's a seat warmer. He's a seat warmer for Kate Forbes. Her time has come, and I think she needs to make hay while the sun shines. With all this dissent currently going on, with all the problems currently going on, she needs to stand up now, grab hold of Fergus and say, right, Fergie, me old mate, he says, me old mucker, let's go into battle. Let's rally the troops and go for it. And she'd get it. Anyway, members of the Nationalist Growth Commission set up by Nicola Sturgeon can see the damage its punitive tax rises would do to Scotland's competitiveness and the ability to attract and retain key workers. But rather than listening to the sane voices within his own party, Yousaf signed off an anti-growth budget that has the fingerprints of the extremist Greens all over it. Oh, it's so green, isn't it? It's, yeah, don't invest. Don't make any investments where there might be growth. Don't make any investments where people will be happy. We want to spread the misery, because they're all a pretty joyless and miserable lot, aren't they? And it is just absolutely destroying everything. Anything to do with people going, social care, healthcare, education, policing, communications, transport, all the things people need, budget's cut. The one thing people don't need, independence, budget up. It's the only area where the budget has increased. Because, hey, ideology is more important than people. And that is why people will die. Wait, people are dying. People are dying in their droves. 25,000 people died on waiting lists because the SNP can't be bothered to invest in the NHS. We just did the video earlier. Babies are dying because of poverty and a lack of social care and a lack of midwifery and things like that. There are so many problems that they're not addressing, and indeed are making deliberately worse. And that's who these people are. I'm going to round off and come up, but there's no excuse for this. So let me count the days. Surely now Alibaba must be on his way out. He appointed a moron as finance secretary who then produced one of the stupidest and worst budgets ever. But one would expect nothing less from a woman with an IQ of 86. He signs off on it after announcing at conference, completely off the back of an envelope, a council tax freeze, which he couldn't fund, and now a completely unfunded announcement is not going to happen at all because the councils, especially the non-SNP ones, are likely to just go, look, we can't work within that framework. We're putting the council tax up anyway. He's seen as weak. He's seen as vulnerable. And there's a lot of dissent. Now, they started as little Chinese whispers, but they're now becoming very loud indeed. And I think that we are looking at the end game of the current leadership, shall we say? And I think that the opening gambit of Kate Forbes is already being laid, and I think that soon for Hamza Yousaf it will be checkmate. Here's your coat, sod off, and then things will change. And a lot of the people currently in the cabinet will find themselves gone, but mostly, of course, the Greens. They will be relegated back to where they belong, the backbenches where they can sit and fume and remember the glory days of when they were ministers. And it will be the only time they were ever important in their life. Especially for Ross Greer. He'll hate it. Good. Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this enough to hit that subscribe button. Certainly hit the like button. And I will speak to you later. Bye.